Quarantina Cantina with Tina!
Welcome to the Quarantina Cantina with Tina. I'm your host, Tina, and with me, as always, is crippling anxiety. In the dystopian science fiction hellscape that is our current reality, there are two things that I'm hoping you have a lot more of in your kitchen. Time and bones of things. I know, that's a very controversial ingredient. Our time is precious. And even in quarantine, who has the time to be embarking on a recipe that might take 2 entire days? But hey, don't worry. You mostly don't need to be doing anything. It might only be 30 minutes or so of actual active time that you're putting into... What's that? Oh, bones of things are the controversial ingredient. Who doesn't have bones of things? Okay, so apparently I have to explain why you should have bones of things. Well, you know all the meat you buy originally had a skeleton, right? In the before times, a lot of people used to just throw those bones away like they were trash, but I made a habit of hoarding them. Now, yes, I have been accused of using the bones to put on macabre puppet shows, but that is not all I do with them, Mark! Simmering bones over time doesn't just extract flavor to create a savory liquid base, it also allows collagen in connective tissues to break down into gelatin, which adds body. In fact, if you allow enough gelatin to be extracted from the bones, once you cool your liquid, it will set up just like Jell-O. Gross. That's where the name Jell-O comes from. It's gelatin, just sweetened, flavored gelatin. There's some debate on whether what we're making should be called stock, or broth, or bone broth, or bouillon. I find that whole argument tedious, and I've found you can shut it down pretty easily by telling people, it's called skeleton Jell-O. And then they won't talk to you about that, or anything, ever again. Gelatin content is also one of the big reasons to make your own stock at home and not buy it from a store. The store-bought brands, if you pour that out, you can see it's really thin and watery. It might have some flavor, but it doesn't really have any body. It's not skeleton Jell-O. Store-bought stocks also typically have way too much salt in order to help keep them shelf stable, so if you try to reduce them to create a sauce or a thicker soup base, they're not ever going to actually thicken, they're just going to get saltier and saltier and saltier. Like me, the longer this quarantine drags on. So because store-bought beef stock sucks so much, and we're making a homemade stock today, let's go with beef stock. And when I think of beef stock, in all its savory, rich glory, I think of one dish: French onion soup. That is definitely the reason I'm making French onion soup, and not because I messed up an Amazon Fresh order and added a 0 to the number of onions that I wanted. That's great though, because French onion soup is actually a perfect test case for a good stock. It's a simple dish. It has 4 ingredients: the stock, the onions, the cheese, and the bread. My producer, the Ghost, baked up some fresh baguettes just today, and the Ghost assures me they are definitely bread. The cheese I have just sitting around in my cheese drawer, so that only leaves 2 things for me to execute well. So let's start. So the first thing that I'm going to do is roast my beef bones. I have between 4 and 5 pounds of beef bones here, a combination of bones that I saved from steaks and things that I ate in the before times. I also have cow feet. I know that's a little strange, but they've got 3 things that are really going for them. First of all, they are super rich in collagen. 2, they're also really cheap. And 3, nobody minds if you take all the cow feet. I also have some oxtail that I happen to have in the freezer, but really whatever you have is going to work. The reason that I'm roasting them is twofold. One is that as big bones, they're going to need a kickstart to really starting to break down that collagen into gelatin. The other is that adding browned flavors from caramelization and the Maillard reaction in the oven is really going to shine in the finished stock. I'm going to put these in the oven for between 20 and 30 minutes, between 400 and 450 degrees. You want to see browning, some golden brown color. You don't want to see any burning. So at this point, for most of the time of this recipe, you're very hands-off. This is not one of those times. You could skip this step. Roasting the bones is going to result in a very deep flavor, but it's not strictly necessary, especially if you're using smaller bones like chicken or beef bones that have been cut or sliced for some reason. Personally, I almost never roast my chicken bones because I like my chicken stock to have a nice, clean, neutral flavor. I don't want it to taste really strongly of chicken so that I can use it in more things. Once your bones and meat have started taking on a bit of color, it's time to add some flavorful aromatics. In my case, I'm going real simple. I'm just adding some onion, carrot, and celery. I'm going to brush those all down with a little bit of neutral oil to help them brown, and back in the oven. Okay, so if you're roasting your bones, hopefully you've got some good browning like this on your bones. Now it's the most important part, which is simmering your bones and your aromatics. You have a few options here. The most traditional is a stock pot like this. You could also use a French oven like this. It's much thicker, it's going to hold temperature a lot better. It obviously has a lot less volume compared to that. My favorite, though, in recent years, Americans have been reintroduced to pressure cookers, largely through the amazing success of the Instant Pot brand. And that allows you to do the same amount of cooking in a small fraction of the time. And if you don't have an Instant Pot... How? How did you avoid an Instant Pot? They're everywhere! It seems like they spring out from the ground! It doesn't matter. If you don't have an Instant Pot and you want one, just mention the mere idea of cooking within earshot of that one annoying friend of yours, and you'll find you have an Instant Pot. I might be that friend. So, I'm going to use the pressure cooker because I have one, and it really saves a lot of time. Now, the big question is, how much time? How much time does this take? And the most honest answer is, how much time do you have? Because the more time you can spend allowing your stock to cook, the better your stock's going to be. So then we add water. If you're using a traditional stock pot, you want the water level a few inches above your ingredients. Even if you're just using an Instant Pot or pressure cooker, you want the water level to at least submerge all of your ingredients. This is the last opportunity to add flavors or aromatics. I'm going to add some bay leaves and some thyme sprigs plucked from our garden. I generally wouldn't go too crazy on seasonings here, and then put it on to cook. For beef stock in a pressure cooker, I would say a minimum of 2 hours. I'm gonna try to keep it on for 4. It's tomorrow! Movie magic! And I have lots of shirts like this. Anyway, let's go over what's gone on since yesterday. Some of what's gone on since yesterday. Just the soup stuff, not the... So when you were done cooking your stock, which again should just be as much time as you were able to give it, in between your busy commute and work life and social plans, however much time you're able to carve out, your stock appreciates it. So now you've got to drain it. This is a little tricky because this is a lot of very hot liquid, so you want to be careful. Get yourself some heat-resistant gloves, oven mitts, something like that. I use a 2-step process. I first pour the liquid through a colander into a large bowl. Once I've done that, I take the liquid and I use a fine mesh strainer like this and pour it into typically a baking dish with a lot of surface area. And the reason that I'm using something like this instead of a bowl is because with more surface area, it's easier for heat to escape faster, and that's important because you can't stick these things directly in the fridge. It's so much liquid, and it's so hot that it is going to change the temperature of your refrigerator and not the other way around. So as your stock cools, there are two things that are going to happen. One is that the fat that was present in the stock is going to naturally separate, rise to the top, and solidify. You don't want this fat in your soup. It's going to leave you not feeling great. It's also going to leave a really greasy mouthfeel when you eat the soup. So we're going to skim it off. The second thing that's going to happen is your gelatin will set up. This is going to be the real test of how much gelatin you manage to extract. All right, that is skeleton jello. So, whatever you're not going to use right away, you're going to want to store, because you put a lot of work into this baby. Stock freezes extremely well in large sheets like this if you think you're going to want to use it for a soup. I always make sure to take a few ladlefuls and portion it into ice cube trays, freeze those, break them out, and store them in a Ziploc bag, a freezer-safe bag. That gives you just the perfect portion of frozen stock to throw into a quick pan sauce, anything like that. If you manage to get enough gelatin into your stock that it sets up like this, you might have to heat it up a little bit to get it back to a liquid consistency to actually fill the ice cube trays. Good problem to have, because it means you got a good stock. Alright, so that is the stock completely sorted. Now you have just one more thing you can do with bones of things. So many good reasons to keep those around. Otherwise, I've got some caramelized onions cooking in a cast iron pan. That's another video, though. We've got some Gruyere in the fridge, and the ghost's bread turned out to be, well, it's bread. The dog's interested. Let's make French onion soup. Okay, so after my onions were caramelized, I just added however much stock I needed to make a soup. I finished it off with a hit of sherry vinegar, a little bit of soy sauce. Then I just added croutons from the bread the ghost made, covered that with cheese, and broiled it until it got a nice crispy brown. That's dinner! We'll see you here next time on the Quarantina Cantina with Tina, because this isn't going to be over anytime soon. Wash your hands.